Hello and welcome. In this session, we are going to learn basics of Redis database, which we are calling as a database as well as a cache mechanism as well. So this is going to be very exciting because we are going to talk about one of the database, which is as well as the cache, where everything is going to reside in the memory. So the topic for the discussion is the introduction of the Redis and who all are the top service providers in cloud as a managed instance for Redis. So let's start. What is Redis? So Redis stands for Remote Dictionary Server, which is an open source in-memory key value data store. So when we are saying data store, in layman language, we will say it is a kind of the way to store the data. So it's a data store for key value. So if we talk about the history, Redis project, it was initiated by Salvatore Sanfilippo, who was the original developer of Redis, and he wanted to do some kind of scalability improvement in one of his Italian startup. And the way it has progressed, it has caused the Redis to grow like anything. So as of today, when we talk about Redis, which is remote dictionary server, Redis in memory is being used as a database. It is also used as a cache. So these are the two topmost usage of Redis database as well as cache. So it can be used as the message broker and queue as well. So these are the four most important usage of Redis. So when we talk about the response time, because everything is there in memory, so the response time of Redis it's in milliseconds, and because of its such a great feature, and because of the response time which is in milliseconds, this particular Redis is being used in the gaming industry, it is being used in the IoT, it is being used in healthcare services, it is being used in financial services. So where speed matters, where speed is of utmost importance, Redis finds the place over there, both in terms of the low latency and high response time. Then you can assume the Redis over there, both as a database as well as the cache mechanism. So let's talk only about the Redis database. So if we consider Redis just as a database, then we will say that Redis is a NoSQL database. And NoSQL database has an entire history why what is NoSQL database. When you don't want to store your data store in the form of rows and columns as a table in what you say the structured data, your data is unstructured and you have three V's involved, which is volume, velocity, and variety. In that case, you are going to use NoSQL database. So when we are saying Redis, it has the key value store. So when it is also considered as one of the topmost NoSQL database. If we talk about the DB test engine, so in DB test engine, this is always coming near and very close to MongoDB NoSQL database. So the way it stores the data, it is in the form of key value. And one of the topmost priority of being uses of Redis is it is an open source, and this is BSD licensed. So BSD is Berkeley source distributions licensed. And the why Redis is always in news, because the entire data set will be there in memory, and the kind of the data structure which it supports everything like strings, it supports hyperlogs, it supports bitmaps, it supports sets, it supports lists. Talking about the features of Redis database, we already discussed that the entire database will be in the memory. That's why it is relatively fast, very fast, rocket fast as compared to the databases which resides on disk. And it has the rich sets of the database, and everything is stored in the form of key value. Redis can have enormous amount of slaves, so you will not go out of number of nodes which it will support in the terms of slaves. It supports atomic behavior. So it is something like if you are there are two concurrent session. So Redis database, it is going to receive the updated value. So everything in Redis will be there in the form of set. You uh, set some value and you get some values. This is like you put and you receive those. So it supports hundreds of thousands of sets and around 75 to 80 thousands of get. So this is like you request for something and you get that in response. So Redis supports all the rich data types, whether it is going to be lists, sets, sorted sets, or hashes. And when we talk about the usage of Redis database, it can be used for n number of purposes, whether it is your caching mechanism, whether it is message broker, if you wanted to use in queues. And Redis supports your publish and subscribe. So if you want to talk about any short-lived database in the application, then you can count on Redis database, whether it talks about the application session or the hit counts on the web pages. So everything is there in the Redis. So it is something like if you have a web application on the internet, and if you wanted to count how many visitors came, and so it is going to count that as well. So if we talk about the comparison with the other key value store databases, so Redis comes on the top because of its in-memory, and it is persistent on the disk. So if you have a limitation when you have high writes and read behaviors, then in that case you can use the database which resides in the memory. So Redis, as compared to other key value store, it supports more number of data types, so it is preferred as compared to other key value data stores. So, I'm only talking about NoSQL databases. And the memory representation of complex data, it is the way it is handled. It is easier as compared to any other key value store data stores. So being so many usage, the top foremost usage, and it is being discussed everywhere because of variety of usage at the application. So all the three major cloud service provider, whether it is Amazon or it is Microsoft Azure or we talk about Google Cloud, all of them are providing the Redis instance as a managed instance. So if we talk about AWS provides two versions of Redis. So first is Amazon MemoryDB for Redis, which is a Redis compatible in-memory database service that provides you amazingly high performance database, because it is the way your Redis database works, the same way your Amazon MemoryDB for Redis works. And the other version of the Redis in AWS is Elastic Cache. So it is used as a caching service, which can accelerate your data access from primary database, and the latency it is in microseconds. So Elastic Cache, it supports it also offered the supports for your Memcache, which is another kind of open source caching engine. So in AWS, you have Redis being used as a database as well, which is known as MemoryDB. So entire database will be in memory. And if you wanted to use as a caching service, it can be used. The name will be Elastic Cache, and it also supports the Memcache, which is an open source caching mechanism. So there are three terms being used in AWS in terms of Redis. What are the benefits of Redis if we are using it as a managed instance? So all the open source databases, no SQL databases, they are very, very difficult to manage when it comes to replication, availability, security, and other stuff. So when you talk about a managed instance, which is being offered by AWS as a memory store and an elastic cache, in that case, your entire instance will be managed by your AWS, which is your cloud service provider, and being it is going to be ultra fast because it is not going to take a roundabout of your disk. Everything will be in the memory, so it is very, very fast. So if you talk about the latency is in microseconds. If we talk about the response, it is in milliseconds. So, and it supports hundreds of thousands, or if you talk about millions of records per second, it supports in your Redis AWS managed instance. It supports flexible data structure. If you talk about a string, you talk about list, you talk about sets, you talk about streams, geospatial data, bitmaps, hashes, hyperlog logs. So it is going to support all the data structures. So that brings it at the top when it is in terms of the data structures. When we are talking about the managed instance in AWS for Redis, everything is very, very simple because replication, it is being managed by the AWS. And when we try to do it on premises, it is really difficult. So Redis, it has a primary replica structure, and it supports asynchronous replication, wherein your replicated data will be available on the replica servers. The way any other managed instance works, the same way Redis is also going to work. And when we talk about the high availability and scalability, Redis offers a primary replica structure, which is on a single node in a cluster topology, and there will be other instances available as the uh, for providing the consistent performance and reliability. So multiple instances will be available. When we talk about the open source, Redis is an open source project. So and AWS supports as well. So there is no locking mechanism. If you wanted to move from one service providers to other, it will be really easier as compared to any other. Though we are not going to talk about when we try to exit from one cloud service provider, it is sometimes difficult, but there is an option, and it is not so difficult to migrate from one service provider to other. So popular use cases of Redis, it is almost same. So it can be used as a caching mechanism. You can use for the chatting, messaging. You can use it for a game wherein multiple players are there. Then it will show you the gaming leaderboard. It can cache your session. It can be used for media streaming. It can be used for geospatial data. It can be used in AI, ML, and analytics. So you talk about the scenarios, and it is available everywhere. If we talk about the Memcache, or which is an open source data store, so it supports that as well. So AWS, it has the capability of providing all three. All right, so moving on to the usage, the specific usage of Amazon MemoryDB for Redis. So as we have already discussed, this is Redis compatible. So most of the services which are being provided by AWS, specifically databases, so everywhere it will be mentioned, it is that particular database compatible. If we talk about MongoDB, so yeah, they have DocumentDB, which is compatible with MongoDB database. So same way, MemoryDB is also compatible with Redis database. So we say MemoryDB is Redis compatible. So the tools, drivers, and other things which works in your Redis, it is going to work in your MemoryDB as well. So there is almost no difference uh, when you use the UI of MemoryDB as compared to Redis. So you will not find more difference other than like it is a managed instance and there will be some restrictions. So in MemoryDB, everything will be stored in memory, which enables you to have the read accessibility and write latency will be read will be very very fast, and there will be very low latency when you perform the writes. The second most important part of Redis, so you have MemoryDB and other is Elastic Cache. So it can be used for a caching mechanism, right? And caching, it is being used almost in all the application wherever it is required. So with Elastic Cache for Redis, you can speed up the application's speed, wherein the cache has to transfer the data from your primary database to the data stores. So both are interrelated, the MemoryDB and the Elastic Cache. The second topmost service provider, cloud service provider for Redis is Azure. So for it is called as Azure Cache for Redis. So it is a fully managed in-memory cache mechanism which is used for high performance, and it has a highly scalable architecture. So it can be used for your cloud deployments, or you can use it for the hybrid deployments. And the way Redis works, it can handle millions of gets and sets per second. It has a very low latency, which is there in microseconds, and there is throughput, which is in milliseconds. And because it is in memory and there is no roundabout to the disk, so it is very, very fast. And in-memory databases are always fast, and this is one of the topmost one in the list. So there is a popular question which says Azure Cache is database or cache. So the same question go for Redis as well. So Redis, is it a database or cache? So it depends upon what kind of scenario you are using. What is your use case? So if you wanted to use Redis as a database, it can be used as a database wherein it is going to reside in your memory. If you wanted to cache that, then it will be used as a cache mechanism. Most of the time when we talk about the Azure, it is being used as a cache. So it all depends upon your use case. So Azure Cache, it can handle your data that needs to be accessed more frequently, and and by virtue of the nature, like if you wanted to access anything uh, again and again, then it is always advised to put it to the cache. And when your entire database is in cache, then it is going to be amazingly fast. So again, same thing, whether it is a cache or a database. So the answer is here. The third one in this series is Google. That's really, personally, I believe this is my favorite, and probably everyone. Google Cloud. Nobody can compete the infrastructure of Google, and when they provide Redis, I believe it is going to be one of the topmost choice. So you have two things over here. So you can use memory store. It supports for Redis, or it can be used for Memcache. So as a managed instance, this will be fully managed. If you talk about provisioning, if you talk about the replication, you talk about patching, everything is going to be automated. So we are not going to discuss about that. So the only thing is, being an open source Redis, here in Google, you can use it as a memory store. and or you can use it as a memcache. So again, everywhere it is same. So if you talk about the memory store is compatible with your open source protocol of Redis, and it is the way you work it on premises Redis. It is going to be no different at all. And if you wanted to use the export and import feature of your Redis database, then the same way you can use it in your cloud environments so as to move your database to the Google Cloud for Redis. And that's all about it. If you wanted to install Redis on any instance, it is going to be very, very simple. I have done it already, but I'll show you. I have an Ubuntu instance which is available. So the step which you have to follow is you will simply say sudo apt-get update, and then the only command which is required to be executed. In my case, it is already done. So you just have to say sudo apt-get install Redis server. In my case, it is already done. So once it is done, what you have to do is you have to start the Redis server. So to start the Redis server, you will simply say, so one of the things when you use the apt-get way of installing the software, and especially in case of Redis, there will be an OS user which is created, which will be used as a service account for the Redis. So if you simply select the cat etc password graph for the Redis OS user, then Redis is created, and initially it is created as a no login user, operating system user, who is going to be the owner of the Redis software. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that from no login you change the user mode to, so you simply have to execute this command, which is going to change the login of a Redis operating system user to bash. So if you execute it, it is going to change the shell. Initially it will be, I'll show you one more way of looking at it. So once you see it this way, there are a lot of logins which are created. OS users are created with the no login, so that they cannot log in it. But in case of Redis, it is also created like this /usr/sbin slash no login. So you will not be able, though the user ID, operating system user ID, which is being used as a service account, it will be created, but you will not have the access. So what you need to do it, let me clear the screen. What you will have to do it, you need to change the shell using sudo ch and this is going to change from no login to bash. So once it is done, you will be able to switch to the user. So switch to the user, and then you can start the Redis server. I'm not sure if I have installed it that way or this way. Okay, Redis is starting, so this is happening. And how do you access the command prompt of Redis? So you simply say Redis CLI, and it is going to invoke the command line interface of Redis. So you simply say Redis-CLI. You can see a command prompt which will see the IP address where the server is configured as of now. By default, this will look like this, unless or until you change the IP address. And then how can you verify whether your installation is correct or not? So you simply have to just fire a command ping, and if you see a response pong, is ping pong. So if you see it like this, that means your Redis server is behaving perfectly. And in our case, we have installed it as a service. So what we can do is, when you exit out of this, and if you need to stop it, so you need to stop the service. So you will say sudo systemctl stop Redis. If it has a sudo privilege, it is going to stop from here. Otherwise, I can stop. Okay, it is not going to do it from here. You can do it from here, sudo systemctl stop Redis, or if you have to start it again, you can use the sudo systemctl start Redis. If you want to check the status, You can check it. Redis is running. And if you wanted to access the Redis using the GUI tool, so I think there is a tool which is available to access the GUI, and that is known as Redis Desktop. And if you try to download it from here, you will be able to do it. I think there is a 14-day trial version. After that, you will be charged, I believe, 3 point something dollar, and you should be able to use it. And Redis Desktop Manager, which is a GUI tool. So that's all about the Redis. So just a very quick, we'll quickly go through. We discussed about the introduction for Redis, which is in-memory database, which can be used as a database as well as a cache mechanism. So wherever speed matters, you are going to use Redis. Then we saw the service provider for Redis as a managed instance in cloud. So we saw in AWS it is being used as MemoryDB and Elastic Cache. So these are the two terms, and it also supports Memcache, which is also an open source caching mechanism. These are some of the benefits which we saw, the different types of data structure which Redis supports. It is irrespective of the cloud service provider, and the different kind of capabilities which are there in cloud, like replication, high availability, scalability, security, the popular use cases of Redis, wherever speed and caching is required, where the data is very short-lived, and if you wanted to capture that, you have to use Redis. And these were the different characteristics of Redis when it is being used as a memory database or it is being used as a elastic cache. Then we saw the Azure Cache for Redis. So there is a popular question which says whether Azure Cache is a database or cache. We saw that as well. Then finally, we have seen the memory store. That is Google Cloud version of Redis. And finally, we saw a small demo wherein we have installed the Redis on Ubuntu. I have spin up the instance as an EC2 instance where I'm connected to it through a PuTTY session. I have downloaded it, and then I connected through the Redis CLI. I hope this is going to